Quick, I have a friend who recently lost her husband in an accident, and she feels that God had nothing to do with it. God didn't cause it, didn't not cause it, just happened. And I think I've learned from you that actually God is in control, and it's a sign of confidence, the fact that He is in charge. And could you comment on that, and what verses would I use to say God is, you have all the more confidence that God is still in charge, even if in a sad situation?
Yes, and believer or not believer?
Believer.
Oh, my. I mean, yeah. Okay, what verse? Good. That I was going to try and do these in order. What do we say when someone's husband dies? We say, or anybody dies, we say Psalm 139 is the first one. It says in Psalm 139 that every day of our life was written down in the Lord's book before we ever lived one. We say Hebrews 9, which says 26 and 27, it is appointed unto man once to die. Nobody dies prematurely from God's perspective. No one dies accidentally. There are no such things as accidents with God, only His appointments, because He is truly in charge, and certainly He is in charge of the length of our days. We are not. And death is actually His appointment that He has set for us. And for specifically a believer, it says it's appointed unto man once to die, after that the judgment. That is for the unbelievers. But for us, it is when Psalm 23, verses 4 through 6 take place, where David said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, thou, that's my good shepherd, art with me. You know what's interesting? Jesus actually comes at the moment of our appointment and walks us through the valley of the shadow of death. I used to love the founder of Tulsa Bible Church, used to attend Tulsa Bible Church. He had founded it many years before, and he was very elderly. He used to be so old he would lean against a pillar in the service because he couldn't sit up straight. He was so old he couldn't sit up, but he wanted to be at the services, so they found a spot where he could lean against one of the metal poles in the church. And he would sit there through the whole service, couldn't hardly lift his head, but he was holding out for the rapture. And I remember visiting him in the ICU as he was dying, and he had all of his oxygen on and everything, and he pulled it aside and he said, tell me why I'm going to miss the rapture. I said, me? I'm going to tell you why you're going to miss the rapture? I can't believe you'd even ask me that. And I said, Willard, his name was Willard Heck, I said, there are two raptures. I said, there is the group rapture, which is what Paul talked about in 1 Thessalonians 4. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout and the voice of the archangel and the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. And then we which are alive and remain shall be harpazoed up together with them. But then I said, there is the private rapture. I said, in the private rapture is when the Lord himself comes to walk you, just you, Willard, through the valley of the shadow of death, and to take you, Psalm 23:6, home to dwell forever in the house of the Lord. I says, which would you rather be a part of? A group or just Jesus with you? He put his oxygen mask back on. He said, a group. And I said, then I'm going to tell you, you've got the private one coming. And I said, the Lord is coming. And you know what I enjoyed doing his funeral? It was just utterly packed. He touched so many people's lives. Started a Christian camp, started a lot of ministries. It was interesting. Many unsaved people came, and I said, did you know what? We know exactly where Jesus Christ was last Thursday at 9 a.m. He was in the hospice care of the Heck home basement, where Willard breathed his last breath, and Jesus came straight to him. And as he closed his eyes and took his last breath on earth, the Lord walked him safely through the valley, because he had written down every day of Willard's life in his book, and he had set an appointment with him. So, and then another thing, Pat, I would say is Romans 8:28, that God causes all things to work together for good. There are no accidents, and the death of anyone, whether it's an infant or an elderly person or a young person or a military person or anybody, For the unbeliever, it was an appointment and they're headed for judgment. For a believer, it was written down all their days, and they also had an appointment, and Jesus came for them, and he took them home. And for those of us who are alive and remain, we have a group exit. So that's what I would say to her, and that's what I say often to people.